All right. Hello and welcome to Channel of Curiosity. I just realized it's been a while since I've done a fun interview and I'm super excited about it. So thank you, Michelle, for hanging out with me and being here with me today. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here and chatting with you today too.
I'm excited too. I'm so excited. This is like the perfect generator projector thing. We were in a group thing together and it
Yeah.
was like the last second our coach is like signing off and you're like, Rebecca, message me.
Please, please, I want to talk to you. It's so nice to talk to somebody else who does what they do this for a living. Like, oh, this it's refreshing, right? Instead of teaching all the time, it's so exciting to connect with somebody who's like as a human design nerd as I am.
Yes, yes. So I think I emailed you like immediately
Did.
because I was so excited too. Like there's just something magical about nerding out on human design with people. Um, I think especially for me, like as a mental projector, if somebody really knows human design, I don't feel like I have to explain myself, and that feels so nice.
Refreshing, right? Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah, so I am the emotional generator. So yes, Miss Emotional Waves here. Um, yeah, that part of it, like even like learning everybody's different ways of processing, like how it is that they get their answers. And I know I'm already going off on a tangent, but I find it so captivating and so interesting because you can actually start to see how, like for you being a mental projector, right? Being able to talk your stuff through is the way that you feel seen and heard. And for me, I have to go inward. I have to like
Mhm.
go, "Ugh." And it's interesting because I don't know how you feel about it, but as a mental projector, I find that when I'm having my emotional wave, because I'm a 4130, so deep
Mhm.
emotional waves, right? Like I can be going high, high, high for a really long period of time, and then I just take a big kerplunk. But I always find when I take my per clunk that I want to make a decision so badly so that I can get to feeling better because I think in making the decisions, I will feel better. And of course, it's the total opposite. But my emotions are telling me just make a decision, just make a decision, just make a decision. Have you experienced that with any of your clients who have emotional as their authority? And I know I'm already going off a tangent. Sorry. I had something totally completely planned. But I think it's interesting because I love how you get to process and how I get to process. And they're so completely different.
Yes, it's fascinating to me. So interestingly, I haven't really had any emotional clients, but both of my sons are emotional authority and my mom is an emotional manifester. So I've kind of observed it my whole life, but they have individual waves. My youngest and my mom are both emotional manifestors with the 1222.
Okay.
And then my oldest is a emotional projector with the 3955 and the 3740. So he's got this interesting combo. So I've actually this channel was one I was going to ask you about because I find it so curious being out there on the collective. Like, how does this feel for you? And I find just the idea of the process so similar. The way emotional people define the process feels very similar to like the mental projector process. It's just that like I have to talk it out to relieve my mental pressure and to get clear on what's happening. And then you with that solar plexus root, it's like you've got to feel out the process, like you were saying, to kind
Mm-hmm.
of have clarity. But the idea of just make a decision so you can be free of this weird time and just go and live your life already, I really relate to that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, and I know people consider that 4130 the collective, right?
Mhm.
The collective line. And it's interesting because I don't necessarily always identify with that with my emotional waves, right? Like um I think I think typically my emotional waves when they do hit, and listen, I'm also older, right? And I do think that there's some, I've studied emotions my whole career. Um,
Mhm.
and so I think that there's some value in that, but I used to think that it was the bad part of me, that emotional side, because boy, that gate 30, whew, we like to go deep, we like to go dark at times, and it's easy for us to go there, but we also enjoy really deep conversations with other people, like that fluffy stuff. I'm not really good at just having I can do it, but like having general small talk conversation, it's like it's a struggle. It's like, that's why going into big public places and having to meet a bunch of people, I don't know that I can converse very well with it. But you give me something, a hot topic, and I can go for a long period of time. But yeah, so processing for me with the emotions, I think I have to give myself a grace period. And I typically, what I've learned through it, because it's the 4130, is that um, I learned about 10 years ago to give myself a 24-hour window
Mhm.
where I can just be in whatever emotional I want to be. And I'm not making any decisions in it. And there's some relief in not making the decisions, but there's also that fight of like, but if you just make a decision, you're going to feel better. And I'm like, no, I'm not making a decision because I'm going to make it on a wave and I'm not supposed to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you experienced in the past, maybe pre-human design or even in the beginning, when you're figuring out this emotional wave and you get to that point where you're like, I'm just going to make a decision so I can get out of this? Does that decision ever work out? Or are
No.
those the decisions? Yeah. So that's the other thing, I guess, where it's like, why would I?
You know what I find is that it's not necessarily that it doesn't work out, right? Because if I make a decision, it's my choice. I have free will. But what I find is that it really wasn't in alignment if other people are involved,
Mhm.
right? With how I'm making the decision. I find that it's quite bumpy and crunchy, and people can kind of feel my resistance in it. And therefore, I may leap over that hurdle, but then I'll look back and say, oh, probably should have just given myself a moment just to step back and be by myself for a little bit and give myself that grace to be by myself without hurrying everybody else along to catch up with me, if that makes any sense at all.
Yes, yes, it does. Okay, I find this so interesting. I love talking about aspects of chart. I love hearing people's stories who have these aspects that I don't have internally,
Yeah.
and just hearing this experience, especially with specifics of the emotional wave, like that one really fascinates me, how there's different ones for different waves. It's so mind-blowing to me.
Well,
So, yeah,
mhm. Go
I'm just
ahead.
wondering if you relate to that. Like, I know there's like a description, there's like this visual that they have of waves. Does that make sense to you? Do you relate to that or do you feel differently?
I think that most of the time when I do descriptors with people who have different emotional waves than I do, and I, say like, okay, you're the 659 is so subtle you may not even recognize that you have it, right? And then the one that I think, and I'm not diagnosing here, but I have had quite a few people. My background's in psychology and social work. And so I was a social worker for years. So I would have some clients come in, and in particular, 3955 or 2212, because they have such a buildup. No, that's spontaneous. I'm sorry. We consider it spontaneous. Like you have high highs and you have low lows. I've had people who have come to me to say that they have been labeled, I don't know, should I say it? I,
You say, yeah.
I mean, some people have told me that they've been diagnosed as bipolar.
I actually just talked to someone on live last night. They had the 3955
Yep.
and I was describing it. She's like, oh my gosh, I was diagnosed with BPD.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm finding it very fascinating just because of the world that I came from, is that there's a lot of times that the diagnosis that the world has come to, you see it in human design with different aspects in somebody's chart. And then it makes me think, oh, I mean, even the idea of ADD, ADHD, um, how like I watch a lot of shows and I have for years because I have a few people in my family who have been diagnosed with that. And it's interesting because I think you can see more of the specifics in human design when someone's had that diagnosis. So let me get back to that 3955. So this particular person was a manifester
Mm.
who would have her brilliant new idea. She never told anybody. I mean, it was like a classic case. Like she drove to another state because she thought she had to go get this one thing and it was on her mind and she couldn't stop thinking about it. She didn't bother to tell anybody, which of course isn't, a hang up for sometimes for manifestors, right? And so she said she has how I always describe it. I don't know how you describe it. Like with manifestors, is there's a difference between an urge and a preference, right? But this was a true urge. She didn't have an attachment to why she was going. She was just going. Anyways, so then I started watching it with some of my other clients that I knew in my private practice that had that channel, just asking them questions, how they were feeling with their emotions. And I'm really starting to see it's not for everybody. Doesn't mean if you have that, that's what your diagnosis is. Let's just clarify that really quickly. But I found it very interesting because then you think about, what really is I mean, could it be that our diagnosis sometimes in mental health and we need diagnosis, I think, at certain points, right? I'm not saying they're bad, good, or indifferent, but it makes you pause to say, wow, isn't it interesting how if somebody acts in that way, right, that we all of a sudden put a diagnosis on it to help them change their behavior. And in human design, we realize this is your behavior, and we're here to educate everybody else to understand some people are going to have those type of emotional waves. And are they endangering themselves? Of course, if you're endangering yourself, then there's definitely an issue there. But does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's something that has been on my mind the further I get into human design. I was having a conversation with a friend and I was like, does neurotypical even exist? Like, is that even a thing, or is that just something some old white dude decided? Because I feel like everybody is so different.
Yeah.
Like, why are we even trying to put people in a neurotypical box and then acting like all these other people are neurodiverse? Sorry, that sounds really kind of, I feel like the quote air thing or is condescending, but it's like I also am just really identifying more and more with
Uh-huh.
neurodiversity myself,
Uh-huh.
which kind of makes sense as a mental projector. Like, I don't really fit in. And sometimes I want the label, like I want to go get tested and see, like, am I really autistic? Do I have ADHD or something? Because I feel like that will help other people to
Mhm.
communicate with me better instead of like getting weird around me.
Yeah,
So I understand the labels, like for the where we are in the world, but I think it's weird that we even like we don't just observe people as they are.
well, that's the thing that I love about it. It's interesting because I think if there's that, and then let me ask you really quick because it's on my head. Do you have a defined crown in your chart?
No.
Okay, see, well, that's where I see it a lot. Undefined crown, undefined root. But if you
Mhm.
only have one or the other, it looks different. And then if you have both, I see that I can see where people would think that it would be easy to say that because you have a lot occupied in your brain, do you not? I don't have that. I need to ask you that. Like, right, my head and crown are filled in. I've always got my own thoughts going on. So what is it like to have that open crown for you?
Okay, people have asked me this before, and it's weird 'cause I don't know if I know totally how to describe it because my conscious sun is gate 47.
Ah,
It's in my defined ajna, right? So I feel like there's always been a lot in my mind of me trying, like the idea of the oppressiveness in that gate really
yeah.
makes sense. And so that learning the languaging of human design helped me to transition that to more um a forgiving relationship with my mind. But I can feel a lot of times on social media or something, like I've started to really have to cut back on who I follow because I'll just like see half a second of something and think, oh, that's what I need to be doing with my business, and just all of a sudden have this whole thing planned out when really that's not for me. I'm just picking up on their stuff. So yeah, that's where I feel the oppressiveness in that. But then it's also like when I'm in a session with somebody or if I'm live on TikTok, then it's like the channel opens up and there's just intuitive stuff jumping in and it's really cool. So I like that aspect of it.
Yeah. Do you ever, is your root defined?
No, no,
Okay.
it's mental projector. Yeah, I'm just
Oh,
Ajna.
hello. Yeah. Hello. I knew that. Sorry. Hello, Michelle. No, I think that's really interesting because if I were to be looking at your chart independently before I knew you, that would, I wouldn't, I would just ask, like, how do you deal with outside pressure? Like, are you struggling with like knowing when to do things and when not to do things and pulling your way through? Because that's typically where I see that people, I mean, it makes sense. The only two pressure points and to do from the outside world, like
Oh yeah.
that's got
I
to be a
would
lot.
I was a great Manny Gen 3 years ago.
Oh my God, I love that. That's good. That's really good.
Let me tell you, like, this was for real my life 3 years ago. I would wake up, I would go to CrossFit early. So I'd be there at like 4:30 in the morning. I'd do my CrossFit workout by myself because I needed to get that out. And then I'd go to my basketball practice because I was a basketball coach for junior high girls.
Mm.
So I did that. And then I spent the whole day in the gym running classes for PE and athletics. And then afterwards, my son would have his basketball practice for the boys. And then um, um, I feel like there was something else I was doing. But anyway, I was like the
Wow.
whole day. And
Wow.
then even before that, it's like I would coach his city league team. So I'd be coaching CrossFit in the morning, I'd be coaching basketball at night, and just like no naps, nothing. And now I can't even imagine like how I don't know. It was too much.
Yeah. You must have been exhausted. Were you
I
tired?
was, and I didn't even know it until that last year. Like I discovered human design 4 years ago. So um right before COVID. And so that fall semester of 2020 is when I was back and I was starting to really understand human design more.
Mhm.
And I just go, I would go hide in what I called the feelings closet. Like when I was just feeling overwhelmed, I would go into like one of our equipment closets and just go sit there. And sometimes I'd take a nap, sometimes I'd just cry. And my boss was actually one of my clients. And so, like, she was fine. She was great. She actually wrote my resignation letter when it was, she's like, you need to leave.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You have gate 46 out of
Yes.
this. Okay. And do you find that part of your physicality of like probably why you like to work out so much?
Yes, I love it. For a while, it was the only way I could get out of my head with like CrossFit really helped me get out of my head,
Yeah.
and that saved me. But yeah, I love, I've got to do something physical like every day. It just feels good.
Yeah, that's amazing. Very cool. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I don't remember how we got totally there, but
Who knows? Yeah, I was talking. Yeah, I probably took you there. Sorry.
no, it's all good. This is why I love attracting these people through human design because, like you said before, like it's so hard to have a surface level conversation. I don't even know how to do it. So I meet these people where we're like, "Hi, my name's Rebecca. Let's immediately dive into what it feels like to have an emotional wave."
I'm the one that did that. It cracks me up. Oh my God. Yeah, exactly it. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Yes. So let's talk about let's step back a minute and
Yeah.
talk about more about what you do because you are a business coach and you use human design to help people in their business. So tell me a little more about that.
Yeah. So, um, like I said, for years I was a social worker and then I got into business. I owned my own business. I was into sales and then always had my private practice. So I felt like it was kind of finally that when I learned human design, um, I felt like the biggest light bulb because in my own private practice, what I found was when I could study somebody's chart, they didn't even have to, I told them I was going to be looking at something human design. Most people still at that point did, still at this point don't know what it is, right? But it was interesting because I found that, oh, okay, for personal coaching that, let's zoom in, I can see some stuff and I could get to the heart of the matter so much almost more efficiently instead of a couple sessions just getting to know someone and figure out, what was working in their life and what wasn't. A lot of times I work with people with trauma. And then all of a sudden I started to flip it for business. And that again was another like huge aha because when people are operating, because I work primarily with entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and creatives, right? And when I could coach them using that, oh, the efficiency in all of the roles that we think that we have to play, like when we own our own business, um, can be overwhelming. And to like for me to know exactly like I can see where they're going to have some stumps, right? Wherever your fear centers are, or if you have an open ego center, you're probably going to struggle with your pricing. So I'm
Mhm.
just going to zoom in on all of that stuff as they're going through, and then I'm teaching them as I'm coaching them about their business with how it is their voice needs to be seen and heard, right? Like doing the whole marketing aspect of all of it. But you know, what I find in particular for everybody is that when you learn just a little bit about human design and let it integrate, you can read about it, but there's a whole level of like learning to integrate it. So when I'm working with people within their business, giving them an opportunity to come with their issues that the things that they're bumping up against, right? And it depends on, you know, if somebody's brand new in their business to somebody who is looking to hit the $1 million mark, right? Like lately, I've been working with a ton of realtors. Never in a million years thought would I think I'd be working with realtors, but I'm out of the box thinker. And in being a realtor, a lot of the times, you know, they have to do quote these time wasters, in my opinion,
Yeah.
in order to keep whoever group that they're working for, make them look busy. Time
Mhm.
wasters, right? And I'm always talking about aligned action. So I'll give you, for instance, I've got one woman who she has a defined, she's an Aries on top of anybody knows astrology. She's an Aries and she has all the centers colored in her ego center.
Mm.
She's got the 4426, the entrepreneur gate. I mean, the woman, she's got gate 55. She's got 214, like money, 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 money. When she came to me, she said, I'm struggling because I want to go to the $1 million mark now, but my husband keeps asking me when is enough. And I looked at her and I said, it's never going to be enough because that's really what when you looked at her incarnation cross, that's really what she came here to be. She's the person who's going to stretch the boundaries so that the rest of us, like gate 15, she has too, like, so the rest of us can kind of follow her. So when I kind of gave her that relief and then to do more aligned action, yeah, that's impressive because she didn't like it. She's a 4-6. She didn't like doing the marketing stuff. She hates going out and doing the ice cream
Yeah.
social bill crap, right?
Yeah.
So for her, we started working on doing more workout stuff. She's a workout warrior. So we started changing all of her scripts to her showing herself in the gym, showing her doing a Spartan, right? That attracts those people because she wants to get into the $1 million mark, which means she's getting into business property. Well, a lot of
Mhm.
people who are looking for business property want to make sure that somebody's really strong and fierce, and she's showing that authentically to herself. So I think it's probably some of that authentic stuff. So aligned action, authentic marketing, not marketing just because you're supposed to do this. You know, somebody else was successful, so I've got to follow it. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad okay, that last thing you said, like, somebody else did this, so I gotta follow it. That's the thing that's so fascinating to me the more I get into business and human design, where it's like, there is no one way to do business.
Oh, there's not. There's
And
not.
I mean, with me, like, with my 3 line and all my openness, like, I keep trying everybody else's way, and it's like, it does not work, and so it's really,
Uh-uh.
really interesting. I love that you're able to just dig in with people because who would think, "Oh, you're a realtor, let's show you working out more." Like, that doesn't make business sense, but when you get to know who she is and what's happening, it
Mhm.
makes so much sense.
And she likes it. It's her hell yes.
Good, yes.
Right. And she a man, Jen or a Jen, I can't remember. But sacral is her authority, right? And a lot of people around her have given her grief. Like, what do you like all the people on her team? Like, why aren't you coming to the ice cream social? Like, because it's not her jam. She's not pulling any business from that.
Right.
She's pulling business from the people she likes to hang out with because that's how she does as a 4-6, right? Yeah, so I find it really fascinating. Oh, I got another good one. You want to hear it? She's another
Yeah,
realtor.
yes.
She has almost all of her root defined. She's a man gen.
Oh.
And when I did her business chart, because I also look at people's business human design charts, and then we talk about when you step into that role, right? Like, what energy are you walking into? Your energy is the most important. This is just kind of like a sidebar to who you are. And this particular realtor, she can kind of go above and beyond. She would be like one of those people who other people may look at and say, I can't do this job like you do because you do too much.
Mm.
Like she doesn't know sometimes how to stop because she feels that pressure and it's just an internal pressure for her. Like I could do more, I could do more, I could do more. And so she's in, I think 17, no joke, 17 network marketing or networking groups she's involved in. And she
Holy
loves
moly.
it. She
Wow.
loves it. That's perfect for her,
What
right?
is her profile? Do you remember?
I think she's a 6'2", believe it or not.
Okay.
And she's just hitting, the six, she's just hitting her role model. So
Mm,
now what we're discussing, this is what we're working on together now is more about how do you come across now as a role model? Because in the next 10 years, you may want to shift how you're doing your business. So let's get it set up now, right? Instead of doing the hustle. Because she, even though she's got most of those, listen, when she walks into her business, she has all of the numbers defined in her room because her business fires off the rest of it. It's amazing. It's the first person I've ever met that had all of them defined.
wow.
Yeah, can you imagine? So the thing is that as a role model, what we're talking about in the sessions is, hey, if you're going to onboard people onto your team, you need to let them know that they're not going to do it like you. You need to give them off the hook, like, I can't perform like you, because that will overwhelm and short them out, their adrenal glands. And you just need to say, I have so many tools and so many tricks of the trade. I'm going to go through them all with you. I'm going to share them with you, and you're going to pick the ones that work for you. And that, again, is a whole new way of working in that industry. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's been fast. It's been very fascinating.
Yes. Because I can only imagine with such a defined route, if she's hiring people, like I feel like I would probably show up feeling like I've got to do all these things, like just amplifying that root energy.
1,000%.
Yes. So for her to understand what she's doing, like just by existing
Yes.
and then giving people permission is huge. And then that's when it can turn into empowerment.
Yes.
So good.
Yes. And because she's walking into that new phase of her life, right? Where she doesn't have to do the hustle. She can start to acknowledge that hermit. She doesn't give herself permission to be that hermit, that two part of herself a lot.
Mm.
She's learned over the years, right, to do that. But now we're saying, let's set that up now. And I think that is it's one of the attractor factors for her. Like, I know it's usually G center, but for her, people, a lot of other realtors are attracted to her because they see how much she does and they want to mimic it because that's what we've all been taught.
Right.
But I also can see where it might be repelling people because they're like, it's just too overwhelming and I can't do what you do. And so for her to give them that permission is so impact. That's a 6 role, in my opinion, right? Like, she
Yeah.
recognizes, hey, this is just me. You don't have to do what I do. You could be successful on your own format. So we're working on that for her, like to start to create some new content for herself in regards to that. So yeah,
That is
interesting.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so I gotta ask about projectors, specifically mental projectors, if you've worked with them, because I tend to attract a lot of mental projectors and splenic projectors, interestingly. That's who is around me the most. So
Yes.
I'm curious if you work with them and if there's any insights business wise to share.
Um, One of the first ones that I met, she's a splenic. She's actually a dear friend of mine now. And it's interesting because her husband is a generator and she is a splenic projector. And they had a business, a side business. He worked out of the house and then they had a side business with the internet, sold stuff. And she knows this about herself even before I told her what a projector was. Like, she has learned over the years that her just being in her flow and stopped working, like her whole life. When she was little, her dad made her work since she was like age 8, like
Mm.
right when she got home. So as for her, she really struggled as an adult. Like, oh my God, I got to keep up with the Joneses. I got to work like everybody else. And then she finally figured it out for herself without knowing human design, which I love. Yeah, I can't do this. I'm done working. And she would say that to me all the time. I'm done working like that. I'm only going to teach classes when it feels right for me and blah, 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 blah. So the story goes, her and her husband's business were kind of tipping it off. It wasn't doing very well. So she looked at her husband and she said, "We're going to go have some fun." And he goes, "What do you mean? We should be getting on the internet and doing all this work," as a generator would say. She goes, "No, no, no. We're going to go out. And every time we go out, anytime you go to talk about work, I'm going to change the subject and we're going to talk about what fun we're having. And we're going to talk about all the good times we've ever had." And she goes, "And when we get back, I guarantee you there's going to be some sales because we're just having fun." And so that's what they did. They rode off on their motorcycle, went to a restaurant. He tried to bring up the problems. She goes, "No, we're not talking about the problems." She changed the subject and bring something else up. She's really big about talking about manifestations. She's a spiritual coach.
Mhm.
And sure enough, they came back and yeah, sales had went up. And he looked at her and she goes, "Yeah." She goes, I know when I'm stuck, I just need to go play." And he goes, "Oh, I can't go play." She goes, "Well, when you're with me, you can go play," which I think is very interesting when you combine those two energies and you see how that pops up. So to me, she's a great example of how a projector can make damn good money
Mhm.
by giving herself permission to stop working the 9 to 5, doing what she's passionate about, and allowing it to flow to her. Has that been what you've experienced?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that because I forget to play all of the time. I
Okay.
get really I get really, like, focused in on stuff.
Yeah.
And there was a time where I was switching and I'm like, "I've gotta just let myself take naps and rest," and I started telling myself, "Whenever I rest, sales come in," and there was multiple times that I would wake up from a nap and somebody had booked a reading or something had happened, and that honestly hasn't happened in a while, but I've also been, like, trying a little too hard lately, so
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I think it's just something that,
Mhm.
like you said, we live in this world, in this corporate America world, and I was, like, the best student ever as a kid, right? So it's
So sad.
still even like, I'll catch myself, like, stuck in these old patterns, like, "Let's go play, let's go relax, let's just go do something fun," and I've been a single mom for so long, just, like, really focused on more on the health and well-being of my kids than myself, and so
Yeah.
now they're 16 and 19, and it's been really hitting me the past couple months, like, now I can relax a little bit. I can play,
Yeah.
I can have some fun, and
Yeah. I think that's a thing that I've struggled with. Any projector actually that I've worked with is a lot of times I get them when they're in their 50s and 60s and they've been working a corporate job from 9 to 5 and they're wiped out. I mean, energetically. And the two that I just got done working with like last month, we were talking about how they work from home and to give themselves permission to walk away from that computer and go do something during the day. That's a nap, garden, cook, whatever it is that floats your boat to get them through their day because they don't feel as if they can leave, their current jobs. What else do you recommend, like for projectors when they feel like they're really stuck in a 9 to 5 job and they're burnt out? Like, what do you tell people on that?
I mean, honestly, that's such a hard one because I get it, like, people will cling to, "Well, I need money to survive," and I wanna say, I get it, but when you create space, money can come, like, that's been my experience, and it's been terrifying. I quit my job in 2020, like, I'm a single mom, and I was like, "Oh, it's the middle of a pandemic, let me quit." And it's been a lot, especially these past
Yeah.
2 years. I mean, it's not like I'm a millionaire, I haven't been making a ton of money, but I've also been healing a lot, like, the fact that I can take a nap. I've started realizing luxury doesn't mean that I'm carrying a Louis Vuitton bag to my kid's basketball game, it means that I got to wake up on my own this morning. I went for a walk and I did some work. I'm gonna take a nap later, and I get to help people to know themselves better, and I don't have to do it on somebody else's schedule. I don't have to sit in a specific desk chair just because my boss says so, or I won't get paid.
Yeah.
Like, moving into that. So I feel like that allowing of yourself
Hmm.
to switch gears, to change your mindset, to do the healing, to connect to money in this different way,
Hmm.
um, that's the hardest step because it feels like Okay, so my dad is a pilot. I've grown up around airplanes my whole life, and so sometimes airplane analogies come in my head. And I don't know if they relate to everybody, but whenever you're flying, you're like they just have this little stick. It's just a little yoke, and you like better barely hold on to it, but it controls this whole giant airplane in the
Yep.
air.
Yep.
And I could never do it because I felt like if I touched it, then the magical string would break and we'd fall to the ground. But if my dad was flying, we were fine.
Okay.
And same with my kid's dad. He's a pilot. So it's the same with him. Like if he's in charge, it's fine. And so that's been the hardest one for me of like, no, I get to have my own relationship with money. Like I'm worthy enough
Mm,
to receive money and to have this life. It doesn't just depend on my dad or my kid's dad.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's like this is something that's been on my mind a lot lately. And I realized these past 2 years have been kind of a dark, like, not in a bad way, but just in like this releasing
Yeah.
way. This, and
Yeah.
it's now coming, I'm just now coming to the surface. So
Well, and I love that because you know what that shows, the integration part. Like you're taking the design, right? You're really, they say it takes years, and I agree. Like this takes longer than, a year of just study. Like I've been doing this for 3 years now, and it's kind of like I'm still learning. I'm still taking those points. So I love how you're digesting it all. I will say the one thing I do tell all my projectors is I think you and I talked about this on the side, how social media has been such a gift for
mhm,
projectors. Because
mhm.
if they are in business, right, and they already have their page or they have people liking things like, or community, like for you, like when you go on TikTok and you're doing your lives, right? Like you're creating your own community there that they want your advice, right? And I think it's such a beautiful thing for projectors um to see and sense that. I want to share a story, Ken, I really quick about another projector that was totally okay. So I just went on LinkedIn again. I don't know why I activated because I don't do anything on it. Some woman found me and she went to my Let's Connect page, which is really primarily for people who are interested in doing coaching with me, right? I want to meet one on one before you sign up for anything in that particular genre. So she signed up and we get on the call and she had written in her notes to me, this is all me, I've got all this stuff going on. But I just kind of wanted just to connect with you. And I thought, I got a feeling. I'm like, I think she's trying to sell me something.
Mm.
So I got on and we started talking. She goes, oh, I've already had my reading. I'm a projector. And I said, oh, okay, cool. We're chatting away about it. And she goes, well, I was wondering if you wanted me to start bringing you clients. I said, excuse me? So we started talking and I looked at her at the end. I said, can I share something with you? She said, what's that? I said, you weren't invited to ask me to do that. And I know that sounds really harsh, but understand that I can't accept your offer because it's not what this purpose was. You signed up for me to make a connection to see if we could work together. And you're trying to offer me a service in it. And I said, I'm just going to say that if you really want to get into your flow of being a projector, put it out there and let people invite you in. Let me tell you, the magic that's going to happen for you is going to be amazing because I think you're really onto something. But putting yourself onto my ballot, onto something that was utilized for my business, right? That's not going to flow well, probably for a lot of other people out there too. Just to let you know. What do you think of that?
Oh, I think you're spot on. And oh my gosh, because the whole wait for a recognition invitation piece, it's funny, we did talk about that. And then later that day, someone commented on one of my invitation videos on TikTok and was like, yeah, but how do I run a business like this? And I was like, we
Yeah,
just talked about this. Let's make it happen.
yeah,
And that's something that's been really interesting to move in alignment with. And I think the thing that's helped me is when I receive uninvited anything from another projector, it feels so terrible. Like I just want to punch them in the face. You know? And
only
so
only
I
a projector
know,
can say that.
yeah, I know how it feels. So I would never want to put somebody else in that position or for them to feel that way. And I can start to understand when I might be doing that, or just to arrange my energy, because I feel like as a mental projector, you've got to be extra careful because it seems amplified with like just the mental part coming in, like it's a lot. um and I can see how like stuff from the past that I didn't understand, like people who just didn't want to be seen, and I would see them and they would get mad at me and I didn't understand why. I can I can get it a little better now. But yeah, yeah, it's a good thing that you said that, because that's one of those examples where that worked for somebody, right?
Yep.
Like this reminds me, I worked with my very first coach was a Manny Gen, and he worked for Tony. Why did
Tony, Tony Robbins.
Robbins? Thank you. I'm like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
his name was in my head, Tori
Yeah.
Amos. And I'm like, that's not right.
Yep. Okay.
So I'm getting started, my brand new little baby business, like figuring this out. And he's like, okay, you got to write this message. He had this message written up for me. And he's like, just send it to people. Just send like 100 a day. So I was like, cool. I'm like, I've known I'm a projector for like 3 months at this point. I'm still figuring stuff out.
Hmm.
And I end up sending 1,000 messages to people.
Wow.
And because I kept track. And it was a great message because nobody got mad at me. One person was a little confused and like sent some weird message back because she thought I was trying to sell her Arbonne, because I had a comment, or I had a thing about Arbonne on my page.
Okay.
And she's like, I don't support MLMs. I'm like, that's fine. So
To each his own.
um, yeah, but I didn't get one single client from that. And my coach was so confused. He's like, that's how I get all my business. I'm like, well, yeah, because you're a super fun Manny Gen. Like, that is not going to work for me. People don't want to hear this from me
Uh-uh.
randomly in their box. I
Uh-uh.
feel good.
No. No, because marketing for you looks so different compared to marketing. I mean, not only just the invitation, but I really think the way in which you present yourself to the world looks so different than what a manifesting generator or generator would do.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
totally.
exactly. I still am like I sometimes feel like a hybrid of a reflector. So I feel like still to this day I don't totally understand when people sign up for me, when they get a reading or when they decide to come into my space. It's not like I have this marketing plan that has drawn people in. I just like wake up from a nap and someone's booked something. Like,
It's part
okay.
of your marketing plan, my friend. Yeah, really. I mean, I do see that too. You're 1-3, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, you're considered a mentor, because you got the Anjana filled in. You're definitely a mentor. Um, well, and then of course, when you're looking at you can look at your Mercury lines, you look at your profiles, you do all that kind of stuff. There's so many different ways in which you can look at your marketing, right? And what I have found is that no matter what your energy type is, if I can find and tweak, because sometimes it takes a few minutes, right? Marketing is not a one size fits all ever.
No.
And for projectors, because you guys are those wisdom keepers, because you are the bird on the wire, because you can see things so much more clearly than the rest of us who are like busy, like doing, right? It's like when you position yourself in that type of facet of like no push, there's no push here with me. There's no push, but I could see some things, right? Like that's intriguing for a lot of people, especially generators. Like, ooh, what do you see that I'm not seeing? How do you think I can make this a little bit more efficient? How do you think I could do, you know what I mean? Like that to me is always the intrigue. I have another friend of mine who I've just recently met, and she is a projector, and it's so interesting because I can feel it when she sends out an email, like just not an email, when she does a post on her personal page versus her business page. Personal
Mm.
page, it feels cringy. It feels like, oh, she's trying to sell herself again. And then when it's on her business page, it's like people are like, tell me more. It's fascinating to watch. It's
Wow.
fascinating to watch. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. I'm curious to know more about that, or like more observations on that, because one thing that I have heard other business people talk about and marketing people is that people follow people. Like if you look at Gary Vee, there's more people on Gary Vee's page than there is on VaynerMedia's page. And even like Erin Claire Jones, she's a big human design person. The Erin Claire Jones page, she has more than her blueprint, like her business page. And so that's something a lot of people say, but does that work for the projector?
Well, he is a projector. Gary is a projector. And what I love about
Yeah.
him, Gary Vee is a projector. And what I love about him is he just shares his knowledge. He
Mhm.
just says it. And although he says it over and over again, I think a lot of times in business, people are afraid to share, like, am I sharing my top secret, thing that I've got to sell? Because if I share it, then who's going to hire me? And that's a crock of crap for a projector, in my opinion. It's that keep sharing your wisdom on wherever your business pages are, or TikToks or whatever, right? Or in your newsletters that people have signed up, because that wisdom that you've got just starts to anchor in. Like people are just constantly going to him. He says the same thing over and over, but he tweaks it this way and he tweaks it that way. And people still want to be a part of it because he does it from his heart. Man, that man talks from his heart center.
He does. Yeah.
Yeah. And it pulls people in. He wants people to be successful. And that's how I see projectors really being able to anchor themselves a little differently than generators and manifesting generators. And by the way, this is just kind of coming through. This is a good conversation because what I'm actually seeing is that there is this ability that for you guys to share that wisdom. But if you're doing it from the aspect of, I don't need anything from you, I don't need you to buy things from me, OMG, I think that that's one of the most unique, because who tells you that, right? As a coach, like don't try to sell your things. You will sell it, but it's not like you have to sit there and say, hey, this is my book, get me. Oh, that's interesting because it just hit me. Another projector that I follow, she just put up her book and she just said, here's my book and here's what it's about. I hope you guys want it. And it's like, oh, girl, you could have positioned yourself so differently in that presentation of that book. And listen, nobody's perfect. And I hope I didn't come across as being, you know, that was rude. I didn't mean it in that way. I really do mean it in that I could see that if she were just to come and say, hey, I got this little part of this book and I found it to be really, really helpful for me in manifesting because that's what she teaches. And
Mhm.
I'm going to give you a little sample. And if you guys are interested, I have this book for sale. It would have landed completely differently, but she's doing what everybody else does, right? When they have a product to sell, here it is. You need to see me. You need to see me. I need you to buy it. I need you to buy it because of the stupid culture of generators and manifesting generators that you guys have to constantly deal with. Your world is so different.
Yes.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yes, it really does. Because I can tell, I know like I said before, I've experimented a lot on my own with like marketing myself and showing up on social media. And there's sometimes where I can like feel the cringe, but I think it's just the three line and the channel of curiosity. I'm like, let's just see what happens if I
Yeah,
let
right.
them try to do it this way. It's like, no, that feels terrible. But then there's these times, like I said, I'm just surprised most of the time with what people respond to. And it's usually something that I just forgot I even posted.
Right? Isn't that the truth? Yes. I posted one on TikTok, one of my very first, cringeworthy, but I posted a question to 4-1s because I'm a 4-1.
Yes.
And I still to this day, it's my number one. I've had more comments. I don't even respond to it anymore because I'm so tired of responding to it. But yeah, that's it. Like sometimes you put up the post and I'm like, I get it. I should always lead with questions. I should always lead with questions for me. Emotional questions, things that are going to jar people in, like, oh, really? That's what you say. God, that's really interesting. That really popped through pretty strong for that projector. Like,
Yeah. And I feel like it's hard as a projector to position ourselves because we don't really see ourselves in the way others
yes,
do.
that's what
Like
everyone says.
I get so confused sometimes when people will tell me the perception they have of me. I'm like, really? They're like, you should do this more. Like I totally forget.
Yeah.
So like I have one friend, I just invited him into my group membership that I have, House of Rulership. I was like, I just want you there because whenever you're around, you make these observations about something that I'm just not seeing at the time because I'm like in the zone. And so it's just been so helpful to have somebody who will just kind of reflect something back to me
Nice.
then.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because I have the hardest time. And I know that's a big thing with projectors too. So I mean, nobody's meant to do anything on their own, but I feel like as a projector to be a solopreneur and try to do everything, it's exhausting.
I can only imagine because I obviously am not. I can only imagine. Yeah, that it would be a lot. It would be a lot.
Okay, I want to switch a little bit because you mentioned the 4-1, and this is something I wanted to ask you about because the 4-1 profile is so intriguing to me.
Mhm.
And so I'm going to tell you how I tend to describe it, and I want to see if that like feels good to you.
Okay, go for it.
And I want to hear about your experience. But it's mostly, of course, we've read about how the 4-1 is the fixed profile. It's the juxtaposition. So it's in between. And it's just really here. You're just really here to do your thing. Like you're not really creating karma or cleaning up karma. And I know Ross said that it can be a sign of your last incarnation. Like you've done a bunch of work. So you're just coming here to like hang out and party and then peace out. And that the 4-1 can be fairly stubborn. So that's what I know. How does that feel for you?
Well, my husband would definitely agree that I can be a little stubborn. I don't know if I call it stubbornness. I would call it that. I pretty much my whole life have felt like I've had to work on pivoting. Um, I've also felt that the karma thing, I struggle with that description, and I'll tell you why. Because I've been blessed to work with a lot of 4-1s. And so I'm always asking them, how do you feel about your karma? Like, and again, people have different definitions of karma.
Mhm.
Like there is like this whole different, like, anyways. So karma to me is like working through possible things that oh, I can't forget that. Possible things that in the past you haven't rectified, learned, and moved through, right? And then I think there's also the instant karma on earth. Like you do a nasty deed and possibly that you'll have something to clear up yourself. That I do see. That I do see. I
Mhm.
and it's not that I haven't had really stories like things I had to work through. You still do as a 4-1. Like you still have all of the same stuff everybody else goes through. But for me, what I've seen is that I can quickly assess why I went through it. I also feel like I don't belong here, that I'm not necessarily uh, from this area, from Earth, if you want to say it as crazy as it sounds. And I've said that since I was little.
Mm.
And so, letting go of not being so serious has been my most difficult thing because a lot of them say that 4-1's like, just be a little bit lighter, be a little bit lighter on that pedal. And as a generator, I have not done that until that's the last like 5 years where I can lighten up and be a little bit lighter and joke because I felt like I had a mission. I didn't know what that mission was until
Mhm.
recently. And so I think that I was always on that bumpy ride of trying to discover things. So I have met with a few other I have a 4-1 reflector friend, and him and I have had that discussion because in my former life before human design, I did past life regressions. And I
Mm.
did one with him as a reflector 4-1, and it was pretty unbelievable. Like, um, when he got done, he looked at me. He said, "I don't think I'm ever coming back here again." And I said, I have to agree with you. I think there is something about 4-1s making it like, hey, I came down here to kind of play in this world again. I don't know necessarily I'll be coming back. And I think they do have that option. Every 4-1 I have talked to has kind of described it in that way. Does that answer your questions at all?
Yeah, yeah. I know I've worked with a couple of 4-1s, and whenever I say like it's a sign of your last life, they're like, yeah, I do that.
Yeah, there is that feeling that you have that choice. Yeah, it's interesting.
It's very interesting. I actually have a little group of um 4-1 mental projectors that have found me on Instagram. Like just one, it was like within a week, a few of them came through, and I'm like, I'm just gonna connect y'all together because I feel like being a 4-1 mental projector is a lot. So
Yeah, right.
yeah, so they've been kind of hanging out with each other and it's pretty cute.
And sometimes I think it's because of that four persona that the four ones have, is that you'll find you'll find the peeps that you're supposed to be having your peeps with, right? Because everything's about who you know, not what you know, when it comes to being having that four as your profile. And I see that a lot with fours, is that they really do really quickly get the ping of like, this is my group. These are my people. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Not all 4-1. Not, I'm not saying 4-1s coming together. I mean 4-1s independently outside of other 4-1s, finding their group that they're supposed to be a part of pretty darn quickly. Because I think that's probably their part of their dharma, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine so.
I think it's the hardest thing is to describe it.
I could see that.
It's kind of like how maybe you feel about being a projector, like not seeing yourself, because I don't know that I necessarily see myself other than just having that I don't know, that hit when I was younger. Like, why, what, why am I here? What the bleep is going on? Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yes, it does. It's like
Right?
I've been feeling that more and more lately. Sometimes I'll wake up from dreams and I'm like, wait, like I feel like I left an alternate universe. I'm like, I don't like being on Earth. Why? What? Why?
I know a lot of people say that.
It's really bizarre. It's
It
kind of
is bizarre, but you know what? It is also the most amazing place to be. I truly believe that in my heart now. Like, even through the trials and tribulations, and even through the crap that's going on in the world, when we start to see each other as human versus human, and not, I'm pointing my finger at you because you're the cause of my problems.
Mhm.
Such a crock of crap that we've all been fed into. In fact, I just heard someone talking about this on a podcast, and he summed it up really well. And he said, you got to understand, as long as there's an option for war, there'll be war. And I thought, now, isn't that an interesting concept for most people on the planet? If you're angry enough, for most, we're not going to go off and kill somebody.
Right.
But we certainly do have that emotion behind it, that we feel like we could go harm somebody. We've all done that. That's why we're human. But I know that if I were to harm someone, I'm going to go to jail for it, right? But as long as the powers that be say, I don't like what you're doing, therefore we are going to come and kill your people, right? Like, as long as that's an option and we're not looking at it from human to human instead of religion to religion or politics to politics, it's like, but it's changing and it's shifting and people are freaking waking up. Don't you see that? Do you see that a lot?
I see that so much now, and it makes
Yeah.
me so excited.
Yeah.
The things that are happening now with the energy shift in 2027 and Pluto moving into Aquarius, like all this stuff, it just gets so excited. Because yeah, the war, I've never understood war ever. It makes zero sense to me. Why would you go bomb strangers and ruin the earth
Exactly.
for what?
For what? It's so sad. But it's changing. And I think some of it is because we all have to, and that's why I love human design so much, because I feel like it's the first tool out there that splices into your DNA and says, hey, these are all your gifts, utilize them. Don't sit back. If you're more collective, go do the collective. If you're more individual, go be yourself. Like, giving each one of us permission to show up as ourselves and not what, and listen, you're a projector. I'm talking to the choir here, right? Like, you breaking out of the mold that everyone is a generator, because truly that's how everybody has been raised, in my opinion, is you're a generator. Work your ass off, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and do things you don't like, right? Because that's what I spend most of my time decompressing generators from, is stop doing the crap you don't like. It took
Right.
it took me years to do that for myself. I
It's so hard,
yeah,
especially people. I feel like anybody might, I mean, you're like a little older than me, but like that time, like, the 80s were just weird. And the
yep,
90s, there was just all this messaging of like you said, like, go work hard, make, like, create your future. You've got to
yeah,
do it, do all the things. And there's
yeah,
no, it just existing. And with
yeah,
the whole like neurotypicality thing we were talking about, like, be this way. But
yeah.
yeah, I love human design for the same reason. It's like, no, everybody's different. And it's so beautiful to see how we all meant to work together. If everybody
Yes.
on this planet was a mental projector, you know how like over analyzing and boring that would be?
I
And
totally, yeah,
if
I get it.
everybody were generators, like
Yeah,
nobody could chill out, or
yeah,
like we're all meant to work together and
yeah.
to learn from each other and build with each other. And it's just so beautiful when you look at it that way.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Amazing. At some point, I would love to get back together and talk about 2027.
Oh, yeah, we should do that because I haven't dug into it. Like, there's a part of me, I just hadn't felt pulled into it.
I
And I've
haven't
heard,
either because I don't know enough about it, to be honest with you. I really don't.
yeah, I didn't, well, I heard Karen Curry talk about it at one point. Because, she studied under Ron. She said that he had this really like dark interpretation of what was going to happen. And um, so maybe that's part of it. Like, I didn't really want to hear Ra's words on it. I don't know,
Well,
but
and I listen, I think that the my teachers have talked about it in a very positive light, right? Which is what I appreciate. I struggle with the timeline of it. I hate anything that gives a year because that's a load of crap in my opinion. This is just my opinion. I don't know that it's going to happen in 27. I don't know if it's already happened. I don't know if it's coming up soon. You know what I mean? Because anytime we put a true time is an earthly thing, right? It isn't.
right.
And this shift that they're talking about is a conscious thing. So, missing the mark on some of that I think can happen. But I would love to at some point in time to discuss all that with you.
Yeah, that would be really interesting.
Mhm.
I'm curious about that as well. Um, because yeah, the energy shifts happening right now just fascinate me. Gen Z,
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with. Gen Alpha, oh my gosh. Can't wait till those little guys get bigger. That's gonna be hilarious.
Is that what they're called right now that are being born?
I think we're on,
You're way up to date on
yeah,
this one,
I think Alpha is still being born at the moment.
Alpha. Okay.
Because I know they're like they're younger right now, but I'm
Okay.
not sure, we could have moved on to beta or something. But
Okay. Oh, you're
uh,
good. You're
yeah,
good.
I don't know. I think the whole generational thing is interesting. And I think because I have a 19-year-old who's he's so much more politically inclined.
Yeah.
Like we have a lot of conversations about stuff.
Mhm.
And so that kind of keeps me in the zone.
That's awesome. That's awesome. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you for just jumping in with me and for sharing everything, sharing your wisdom. I
Just
really
taking it
appreciate
off.
it. I'm so grateful. And yeah, until
Yeah.
next time.
Sounds good, honey.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.